Hey everyone, welcome to week 6, part A. So this week we are going to talk a little bit more about strings, and then we're going to talk about a new type called lists. Today we will also talk about something called nested lists, which you will have a lot of practice with your programming assignment this week. Alright, let's do a little bit more with strings first. So quick review, strings, that's one of our many data types in Python. They are sequences of characters, which can be letters, numbers, special symbols, or the space character. So far we've really only seen strings with input and output. That said, you can do a lot more with strings than just input and output. So for example, processing programs such as Microsoft Word, stuff like that, those programs basically manipulate strings in very large amounts of text. Websites, for example, can also check to make sure that your passwords have certain types of characters involved in them, right? So there's a lot of things you can do with strings. We will have some practice with that a little bit this week and a lot next week. Alright, so one thing you can do with strings that we haven't talked about yet is iteration. So iteration we've talked about a little bit in general, right, with for loops. Every time you go through a for loop, we call that an iteration. You iterate through the for loop. So you can actually iterate, or basically go through each individual character in a string using a for loop. So the setup is just like when you do your normal for loop setup for some variable in, and in this case, what it's going to be in is some string, right? Because remember we said general form of a for loop is for variable in sequence. Now we've said strings are sequences, so you can use stuff other than range right there with for loops. So you can do for variable in string. So the cool thing about this is every time the loop runs, or every time the loop iterates, that variable, whatever variable you pick, will reference a copy of the next character in the string. So it's going to go through each character one at a time, make a copy of it, put it into the variable, then you can do stuff with that variable. Alright, so here's an example. So we have for char in hello. So in this case, char is our loop variable. That is the variable that one at a time is going to get every single character in that string hello. In this case, it's just printing the character one at a time, so we'll have H, and then E, then L, then L, then O. Just remember, this loop is iterating over the characters in this string. So you might have noticed that when I talked about this a couple slides ago, I mentioned that the variable has a copy of the character in the string. So this is important to keep in mind. The reason why this is important is because let's say during your for loop you change what the value of the variable is. So since the variable only has a copy of the character in the string, if you change the variable, it won't actually affect the original string itself. So here's an example to sort of illustrate what I mean by that. So here we have department equals CSC, so we're putting a string CSC into a variable department, and then we iterate through every single character in the string. Right, that's what this for loop is doing. And do note the indentation. The indentation rules apply with this iteration, just like normal for loops. So this for loop has 3 statements inside of it that we're going to do each time we iterate through that for loop. Print ch, then ch equals a, then print ch again. Once that for loop is completely done running, it will then print department. So let's just step through this together. We'll talk about what's going on here. So again, here's our variable box for DEPT, department. That is that first assignment statement here. It's getting the string CSC. Awesome. Alright, and then we hit a for loop. So this for loop, the variable is ch. Each time the loop iterates, it's going to get the next character. So it'll get C, then S, then C. And we're going to start here. So code is going, first CH gets the character C. It's going to get it as a string type. So this first line right here in the for loop, it'll print CH, this variable CH, basically shorthand for character, and it'll print out this C. So that's this first C right here in the output. Next line of code says, hey, assignment statement, put this string A into this variable CH. So this is what is the important takeaway about this copy business that I was talking about. So this assignment statement right here, this CH equals A assignment statement, that is just going to update what is in this box right here. It is not updating this box. And that's again because this CH just has a copy of the stuff that was in this original string up here, department. So CH equals A, we print CH again, that's where this A comes from. And then we're done with this iteration of the loop, right, because these are the 3 indented lines. We go back to the top, do the same thing again. So arrow moves over, now we're here at the S. Awesome, so this gets updated to the S. Cool. And then we print CH, which is S now. We do the same thing that we did before, where we put A into CH. So that'll print A here. We loop again. We'll move to the next character in this string, which is going to be the C. And that will print out this C right here. Then we'll have CH gets A, then print CH, so that'll print this A. Then the loop is finally done because we've gone through every single character in this variable department. Then at the very end, we print department. So again, note, even though I updated what is stored in the loop variable CH, that did not change anything about the original string. So again, takeaway from this, you can iterate through characters in a string using a for loop. However, do note that the loop variable will just get a copy of each character in the string. It won't be the actual character from the string itself. Do let me know if you have any questions about the difference there. Alright, some more cool stuff you can do with strings. So each character in a string has an index. An index is basically a position. We just use the term index in computer science, but it really just means position. So index is going to be some integer that specifies the position of the character in the string. Right? So again, strings are sequences of characters. They're in a particular order, and the index of each character basically says where it is in the string. So of note, just like we mentioned that we'll be talking about computers in this class, which start counting at 0. It's the same thing here with indexing. So indexing at strings, it's going to start at 0. So do keep that in mind. The index of the last character, then, of a string, since indexing starts at 0, is going to be 1 less than the number of characters in the string. So let's do an example here. So course is this string CSC space 110. Now remember, when you're doing anything related to string indices, make sure that if there are spaces in the string that you take note of that, because remember, spaces are characters, so you do have to sort of account for any spaces in the string. Even if they look like they're just sort of blank characters, they still matter. So looking at this course, CSC space 110, this is our string. Now let's talk about the different indices of the string. So again, an index is basically the position of the character in the string. So this C is at position 0, this S is at position 1, this C is at 2, this space, remember the space does get an index, that's at 3, this is 4, 5, and 6. So again, you'll note that this string, the length of it is 7, right? But with indices, we start at 0, and then because we start at 0, the last index will be basically the length minus 1, which in this case is going to be 6. So do keep that in mind. Looking at this example here, let's say you are looking at a string and you want to access an individual character from that string. So the way you can do that is essentially say string and then indexing operator with a position in it, with an index in it. So here on the right hand side of this assignment statement on the second line of code, we see course square bracket 1 square bracket. So that square bracket, that's the indexing operator that's saying, hey, we have some sort of sequence like a string, and we have a position. In this case, the index position is going to be 1, and we want to pull out the individual character at that index 1. Now again, just like we talked about with the for loop, this is going to pull out a copy of the character. So it's not, the exact same character that's in the string, it's just a copy of the character. So this code right here, this will print the letter S. Alright, so remember, the thing at index 1 is S. It's not C. So please do be careful about that. The indices, again, they start at 0. So if we're saying, hey, what's the character at index 1? That's really going to be the character that comes second. So again, indices start at 0. Next one will be 1, and so on. Alright. So keeping that in mind, there's basically 3 ways you can get a copy of that last character, right? You saw in the previous example, this one right here, that the 0 is at index 6, right? Because indices start at 0. So you could say, course at index 6, that's totally fine. You could also do, hey, length of the course minus 1, right? Because the length of the course we saw is 7, so you could also do 7 minus 1. Or a third way, and this is really the preferred method of doing this, is just saying course square bracket -1. So the cool thing about indexing is if you have a negative index that you're looking up, it's going to assume that you mean length of the string minus whatever that index is. So the reason why this last one is preferred is because this will work with whatever string you're dealing with, right? Regardless of the length, how long it is, anything like that. And it's shorter than having to say, length of the string -1. Instead, you can just say, oh, -1. Or let's say you wanted to access, that second one there. You could do course square bracket -2, and so on. So that's sort of a quicker way to get a copy of the last character of a string. So a common bug that you should watch out for with string indices, is something called an index error. So you might get this message, string index out of range, if you try to look up a character at a position that does not exist. So going back to this previous example, CSC space 110, if I try to print course square bracket 7, meaning, hey, tell me the character that is at index 7 in that course string, there is nothing at index 7, right? Remember we talked about the last index that is being used here is 6, which is what that 0 is at. So in this case, if I try to print course at index 7, you're going to get this error message. And the reason again is because there's nothing there at index 7. So if you get this error message, check the line where the error message is coming from, and check to see what number you are putting inside those square brackets. More likely than not, that number is going to be too big for whatever the length of your string is. Alright, so here are a couple examples. Go ahead, pause this video, take a couple minutes and try to run through this on your own. Come back when you are ready. Alright, so going through this, you should get these letters plus an error message at the end. So let's just talk about it quickly. If you do have questions though or want me to go more in depth about it, please do let me know. So let's talk about this first for loop that we hit, for val in range 1, 3. That in range 1, 3 means that the variable val is going to get the values 1 and 2. So the first time we do the loop, we are going to print x at index 1. X is hello. The character at index 1 in hello is E, because remember H is at index 0, so E is at index 1. Next time around, we're going to get that L, because that is the character at index 2. Then we hit the next for loop, for val in range 4, 0, -2. So again, we have start, stop, but not include, and skip. So val is going to get the values 4, 2, and that's it, right? So then we say print y, square bracket val. So y is this string goodbye, and we print y, square bracket 4 first. Well, the character at position 4 in that string y is that B. The character at position 2 is going to be that O. So that's that for loop. In the very last line, we have print y, square bracket 7, which is going to give us an error message. It's going to give us that string index error message. So, and again, the reason behind that is because y, the string y, goodbye, that E, the very last character, is at index 6, which means there is no character at index 7. So you'll get that error message. So again, just be careful about those, whatever integers you put inside those square brackets for indexing, just make sure they actually exist in the string. Alright, so another pretty cool thing you do with strings is something called slicing. So now, using the index means you're just pulling out one character. Slicing is a way to use the indices to pull out potentially multiple characters. So you can use slicing expressions to select a range of characters from a string. The syntax for it is going to be really, really similar to the same syntax that we just saw for pulling out an individual character using the index. The only difference is that since slicing is going to give us sort of a range of characters, you need to be able to specify multiple numbers, right? A start and an end, basically. So the way we're going to sort of separate the start and the end is with a colon. Now you might be thinking, why don't we use a comma, right? Because we've seen commas to separate values multiple times. There's a reason why we're not using a comma. We will talk about it very soon, I promise. So with slicing, it's the string, square bracket, some number to start, a colon, some number to end, and then a square bracket. So what this is going to do, it's going to return the substring of the string, so basically a string, a smaller string from the original string, that starts with the character at the index start and goes up to, but does not include, so it's just like the range, the character at index end. Alright, so here's an example. Language equals Python, and we print language 2:5. So we're slicing Python. Let's go ahead and write out Python just so we can see very visually what's going on. So here's our string, Python. Alright, and we'll do these little barriers to show, let me rewrite this T, it does not look very good. Okay, we have these little barriers to show the index of each of these characters. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Because indexing starts at 0. And here I'm saying, hey, go ahead and slice up Python so that we start with 2, So we're starting here. And then the end is going to be 5, but again, this works just like the range. So we don't actually include the thing at the end. So we're going to go up to 5 and not include it. So that's going to give us this, THO. Alright, another pretty cool thing you can do with slicing is you can actually leave out the starting number, right? So there's a start and an end number. So if you leave out the starting number, meaning you use the square bracket and then you don't put a number and then you just put the colon, if you leave out the starting index in a slicing expression, it's just going to default to 0, meaning it will just default to the beginning. So in this example here, you'll see how this slicing expression does not have a number before the colon, which means it's going to slice our string, Python, starting at the beginning, so starting with a capital P, and going up to but not including that end, which is 4. So in this case, we will get P, Y, T, H, right? Because P is at position or index 0, Y is at index 1, T is at index 2, H is at index 3, and we do not include the O because that is at index 4. So again, by default, if you leave out a starting index, it will default to 0. You can do the exact same thing with the ending index. So you can leave out the end index in a slicing expression, and this will just default the entire length of the string. So it'll default basically all the way through the string. So in this case, we're starting at 2, which is going to be that character T, and then it'll just print out the rest of the string. So this will be THON. So again, slicing, start, stop, but not include. If you leave out the start, defaults to 0. If you leave out the stop, defaults to the length of the string. Or another way to think of it, if you leave out the end, it's just going to be the entire string there. So just like range, you can also include a step value. So slicing is really, really similar to range, right? It has the same sort of rules with start, stop, and optionally a step. So in this case, we're starting at 0. Character at position 0 in this case is still that capital P. We are going to stop, but not include the character at position 5 at index 5. And each time, we are going to go up by 2 instead of 1. So the default normally with the step is going up by 1 character each time, by 1 index each time. In this case, we're going to go up by 2. So we'll get P, and then T, and then O, and then we stop. So if for whatever reason you have some sort of string and you want to see, every other character, this is how you would do it. You would use slicing combined with this step value option here. Alright, here are a couple of examples. Go ahead and pause this video and come back when you're ready to see the answers. Alright, so let's talk about this first one here. So this first one, you should get this. So this first one is actually going to concatenate 2 strings. Remember, string concatenation is this plus sign here, and it's basically just smushing the strings together to make one longer string. So the first string we're going to get, we get by slicing department, which is CSC. And this slice, there's no start, so we're going to start at 0, and we're going to go up to but not include 2. So we start at 0, which is C, then we go to S, which is 1, and then that's it, right? Because we're not going to include the character at position 2. So this first string that we're concatenating is capital C, capital S. Now let's look at this second string we're concatenating. We're still in the first example here. So the second string that we're concatenating is lang, sliced starting at 3, ending at nothing, basically. So looking at lang, the character at position 3, at index 3, is H, and then since there's no end index here in this slice, we're just going to go all the way to the end of lang, which is going to be HON. So this first print will be CSHON. Alright, let's look at this second example. So print lang starting at 0, going up to 6, skipping by 3 each time. So character at position 0 is going to be P, that capital P. We're going to go up by 3 each time, which means the next character will be H, and then that's it, right? Because we said we're going to stop at 6, but not include. Alright, let's talk about this third one. This third one's a little bit trickier, because there's 2 colons next to each other, which is kind of weird. So you have to sort of think about, if there's 2 colons next to each other, what number is missing? Right, so the number that's missing in this third example is basically that middle number there, which is the stopping point, right? Because it's start, stop, but not include, and skip. So in this third example, we're looking at the string language. We're starting with the character at position 1, which is Y, and then the stop there's no stop, which means we're going to go through the entire string, and then the skip is 2. So it's going to be every other character starting with Y, which will give us Y, then H, then N. Last example is showing you how you can potentially go backwards through a string. So again, same rules as range. Start, stop, skip. If you want to go backwards, use the negative number there. If you have any questions about these examples, please do let me know.